The story opens with hero Momos, a shy and awkward first-year high school student sitting in her classroom. As she fiddles with her belongings, her coin bag slips from her hands, spilling coins all over the floor. A classmate nearby notices the scattered coins and speaks to her, her tone a mix of irritation and instruction. She tells Momos to look carefully, pointing out that there are more coins over by the corner. Feeling a wave of embarrassment, Momos hastily gathers her coins and thanks the girl. Her voice is quiet and hesitant, but genuine gratitude shines through her words. Inwardly, as she picks up the last coin, she reflects on her life. She tells herself how grateful she is for her peaceful high school life. Middle school, after all, was a mess for her, a time when she was clumsy and always surrounded by delinquents. Her thoughts are interrupted when her homeroom teacher enters the classroom and addresses her. The teacher calmly asks her to come to the faculty office for a talk. Momos looks up at him, surprised by the sudden request, and follows without protest. Inside the faculty office, the teacher gets straight to the point, informing her that she is the only student who has yet to decide on a club. His tone carries a hint of concern as he reminds her that the school requires every student to join one. Bowing her head apologetically, Momos murmurs an apology, unsure of what to say. The teacher, however, doesn't let the matter go. He suggests that she try out for a club, adding that it could even be fun. Momos hesitates before admitting, with visible discomfort, that she has already tried out for several clubs, but was gently turned down by all of them. Hearing this, the teacher's expression softens, and he seems to consider her words for a moment. Then, as if struck by inspiration, his eyes land on Ichikura, a serious and composed student from Momos's class. His voice brightens with the idea, and he calls Ichikura over, asking if he was still looking for members for the Helpers Club. Ichikura, who had been quietly observing, confirms that he is. The teacher explains to Momos that most members of the club are inactive, leaving Ichikura as its sole active participant. Ichikura adds that he had been considering dissolving the club if no one else joins soon. Momos processes this information with growing curiosity. She thinks about how a club with inactive members wouldn't demand much from her and decides this could be her chance. Speaking up, she announces her decision to join. Ichikura responds with a polite but immediate thank you, his usually serious demeanor softening just a little. Later, as the two walk together, Ichikura explains the purpose of the Helpers Club. He tells Momos that it's essentially a volunteer group that assists with school events and takes on requests from teachers and students. Momos listens intently but can't help blurting out her thoughts. She likens the club to a group of official minions, a phrase that catches Ichikura off guard. Her blunt remark makes him laugh nervously. While she quickly waves her hands, apologizing for her words, she explains that in middle school, delinquents often made her do errands and small tasks, so she could relate to the idea of being a minion. As she studies Ichikura, her mind starts to wander. She observes how capable he is at studying, sports, and even maintaining his serious composure. In her thoughts, she labels him as the complete opposite of herself. Lost in her musings, Momos doesn't notice where she's going and accidentally bumps her head against the wall. Ichikura stops and looks at her with genuine concern, asking if she's okay. Blushing, she reassures him that she is. Inwardly, she starts to feel a glimmer of hope about the club. With someone like Ichikura as the president, she thinks the Helpers Club might actually be fun. Just then, a loud voice cuts through her thoughts. A boy from her middle school days, a bully she'd hoped never to see again, stands before her, looking smug. He immediately recognizes her and teases her about being at a new school. His words are mocking as he comments on how different she looks and sarcastically asks if the new school gave her a makeover. Momos freezes, dread washing over her. She tells herself how much she wanted to avoid this exact situation. The boy throws an arm around her shoulder, grinning maliciously as he pulls out his phone. He announces that he's going to show their old friends what she looks like now and insists they take a photo together. Before Momos can react, Ichikura steps forward. Calm but firm, he grabs the bully's hand and stops him from snapping a photo. He tells the boy that Momos doesn't like it and that he should stop. The bully, surprised but defiant, questions Ichikura's actions and tries to pull his hand away. When Ichikura doesn't relent, the boy mutters insults about how annoying and serious Ichikura is before finally walking away. Momos watches in awe, completely stunned. She marvels at Ichikura's bravery and kindness, thinking to herself that he truly went out of his way to help her. Ichikura sighs as if exasperated, calling her shorty to lighten the mood. Confused, Momos thinks about his choice of words but doesn't respond right away. Ichikura notices her silence and urges her to speak up next time. He tells her not to stay silent and encourages her to say something back when people pick on her. Momosa's thoughts spiral as she reflects on how kind Ichikura is. She blushes as she silently muses that maybe the Helpers Club and Ichikura himself might turn out to be better than she expected. The scene shifts to the Helpers Club's next activity, which is to rejuvenate the school's flower garden. Momos holds a wilted flower in her hand, carefully examining it, when Ichikura casually mentions his past. He admits he used to be a delinquent, though he kept it a secret. His tone is straightforward, and he seems slightly uneasy as he shares this part of his life. Momos looks at him, surprised. She notices how awkwardly he's sitting, his posture giving away a mix of discomfort and sincerity. He warns her not to tell anyone about his past, his voice carrying a hint of seriousness. Still flustered, Momos blurts out that he should have left her alone the previous day instead of stepping in. Ichikura responds without hesitation, explaining that it would have been lame to ignore the situation. Momos takes a moment to study him, her thoughts racing. She realizes how selflessly he had intervened and wonders why someone like him would even bother helping her. Breaking the momentary silence, Ichikura's tone becomes lighthearted again as he scolds her. He tells her she should have said something to the bully instead of staying silent. He insists that standing up for herself is important. Momos, feeling a mix of embarrassment and frustration, replies that she didn't have any choice at the time. She promises that when the moment is right, she will handle things differently. Ichikura looks at her with a teasing smirk, his eyes narrowing playfully. He tells her he has an idea if she can't use words to stand up for herself. Curious but cautious, Momos asks what he means. Without missing a beat, Ichikura suggests that she should punch her bullies hard with her fist. His tone is dead serious, but his suggestion is so absurd that Momos is left speechless. She stares at him, incredulous, thinking how crazy the idea is. Her thoughts wander back to her middle school days, where she often felt powerless against the delinquents who surrounded her. She quietly tells him about her clumsy and lame past, admitting that she understood why people made fun of her. Ichikura listens intently before responding. His words are simple yet impactful as he asks her if this isn't the very reason she wanted to change herself. Hearing this, Momos is stunned. His words strike a chord within her, leaving her momentarily speechless. They exchange a quiet glance before Ichikura abruptly changes the topic, brushing off the seriousness of the moment. He suggests they focus on finishing their gardening task instead. The next day, Momos finds herself watering the flowers in the garden, Ichikura's words from the previous day replaying in her mind. His question about her desire to change lingers, and she begins to doubt herself. She wonders if changing her appearance has really made her any different from who she used to be. Suddenly, a voice interrupts her thoughts. A group of delinquents approaches the garden. Momos turns, startled, realizing they are connected to her former bully from middle school. One of them comments loudly that the glasses-wearing guy isn't here, while another grumbles about the annoyance of searching for him. The delinquents quickly noticed her and mockingly ask if she's part of the gardening club. When she hesitantly corrects them, explaining that it's the Helpers Club, they laugh and call it a minion club. One of the boys kicks a nearby plant, grinning as he sarcastically offers to help. Momos, horrified, steps forward and tries to stop him. The boy glares at her, his tone growing angrier as he demands to know why she's interfering. Another delinquent tries to calm him down, but the damage is already done. Momos feels panic rise within her. Her thoughts spiral as she realizes she can't do anything to stop them. Her fears from middle school resurface, and she tells herself she has no idea what these boys are capable of. One of the delinquents picks up a bucket of water and announces that the plants need watering, clearly intending to cause more harm. Momos instinctively steps forward, raising her hand to shield the plants. The entire bucket of water spills onto her instead, soaking her completely. The scene freezes for a moment as everyone, including the delinquents, stares at her in shock. Then, as if on cue, Ichikura makes his dramatic entrance. His voice is calm yet commanding as he approaches and addresses Momos. He remarks on how hot the day is, casually unzipping his jacket and draping it over her soaked shoulders. Momos looks at him, her thoughts a mix of awe and disbelief. Even after everything that just happened, she feels like a failure. Ichikura, ever composed, removes his glasses and hands them to her, grinning as he tells her how cool she is for standing up to the delinquents. He runs a hand through his hair, his demeanor shifting into something sharper and more confident. One of the delinquents whispers to his companion, asking if this is the same glasses guy they heard about. The other confirms, though he looks skeptical. The leader of the group steps forward, taunting Ichikura. He questions if taking off his glasses makes him stronger, sneering as he waits for a response. Ichikura doesn't waste any time. He delivers a solid punch to the delinquent's face, his voice firm as he declares that it does indeed make him stronger. The bullies, taken aback, begin to retreat, though one of them records the incident on his phone. Momos watches, amazed by Ichikura's swift actions. She can't believe how effortlessly he handled the situation, and a part of her feels deeply grateful. Later, the two of them sit outside a convenience store, eating ice cream. Ichikura looks relaxed as he comments that the incident should shut the delinquents up for good. Momos, staring at her ice cream, reflects on what happened. She silently recalls how Ichikura had joked about punching someone and how it had actually worked. Her thoughts drift to her past again, and she admits, almost absent-mindedly, that she doesn't like delinquents. She confesses that they're rough and look down on others, but then, with a shy smile, she tells Ichikura that he's different. He responds bluntly, reminding her that he's not a delinquent anymore. Momos doesn't believe him, but she doesn't say it out loud. Instead, she marvels at how incredible he had been during the confrontation, though she also wonders if he went too far. Ichikura breaks her thoughts by teasing her. He tells her that since he bought her ice cream, she should keep quiet about the incident. Momos immediately protests, saying she doesn't want the ice cream that comes with such conditions. Before she can finish, Ichikura shoves his popsicle into her mouth, effectively silencing her. He grins and points out that the ice cream can't be returned now. Momos blushes furiously, while Ichikura laughs, his mood lighter than ever. Feeling flustered and defeated, she decides to let it go, though she mutters to herself that she still doesn't like delinquents. She crosses her arms in mock annoyance, finally blurting out that he wins, though her tone suggests she doesn't mind as much as she pretends to. Momos is busy with her second task of the day. She bends down, picking up trash scattered across the area. As she works, her thoughts wander, and she silently declares to herself that she is Hiro Momos, a first-year high school student and a member of the Helpers Club. She pauses for a moment, thinking about the oddness of the situation. She reminds herself that the club only has 2 members. Her gaze flicks to the ground, noticing another patch of litter ahead. She sighs internally and continues gathering the trash. While working, her thoughts shift again, and she considers how today, her task is to pick up trash. Feeling a moan of accomplishment, she calls out aloud to herself, announcing that she has finished picking up all the trash. But just as she starts to feel done, she spots even more litter further ahead. Her mind drifts to the other member of the club, Ichikura-kun. She thinks to herself how he is not only a fellow club member, but also the president, and they are in the same class. Just then, she sees Ichikura holding a discarded tobacco box. He approaches a boy standing nearby and firmly accuses him of having dropped it. The boy's expression twists with anger as he grabs Ichikura by the collar and aggressively denies the accusation. He makes it clear that he hasn't dropped the box, but has instead thrown it away. Momos's breath hitches as she observes the confrontation. Ichikura, on the other hand, stands eerily calm, like a statue, without any reaction. Her panic grows as she thinks about the impending danger, worried that Ichikura might get beaten up. But in a flash, Ichikura strikes back. With swift, precise movements, he overwhelms the boy, leaving him bruised and defeated. Watching in shock, Momos's thoughts scramble as she realizes that Ichikura has come out on top. However, her conclusion humorously shifts to note that it isn't Ichikura who gets beaten up, it's the other guy. As the defeated boy stumbles away, Ichikura's voice takes on a commanding tone as he warns the boy not to litter again. Momos, still processing everything, recalls a tidbit about Ichikura. He has mentioned once that he is a former delinquent. She reminds herself that she is the only one who knows about this part of his past. The boy eventually leaves, and Momos turns toward Ichikura to scold him. She voices her concern, pointing out how close they are to the school and warning him that people might see him. Ichikura, remaining as composed as ever, responds that it isn't a big deal because she will cover for him. Momos stares at him, baffled. She questions why he is pretending to be a nerd. Ichikura, with his usual calmness, clarifies that he isn't pretending. He insists that he has quit being a delinquent and only wants a peaceful high school life. He then adds, almost as a command, that Momos will cooperate with him, won't she? Momos hesitates but eventually agrees with a reluctant tone. She assures him that she will. The scene shifts to the classroom, where Momo sits at her desk. Her thoughts linger on everything that has happened so far. She reflects on how she has believed her minion phase is over, but now everything feels like middle school all over again. Her train of thought is interrupted when Yamamoto, one of her classmates, approaches her. Yamamoto asks if she is friends with Ichikura-kun. Momos awkwardly responds, explaining that they aren't exactly friends but are in the same club. Yamamoto's curiosity doesn't waver, as she immediately asks if Ichikura is secretly good at fighting. Momos blinks in surprise and asks Yamamoto why she wants to know. Yamamoto explains that she has seen a scary-looking person bowing to Ichikura the day before, which has sparked her curiosity. Momos's heart skips a beat. Her thoughts immediately go into overdrive, panicking at the idea that people have noticed Ichikura. She silently scolds herself before quickly changing the story. She tells Yamamoto that Ichikura has simply been returning something that the person had dropped. To steer the topic even further, she remarks how skinny Ichikura is, suggesting that he wouldn't stand a chance in a fight and could be taken down with a single punch. Internally, however, she is sweating bullets, worrying about what Ichikura might do if he overhears her. To wrap things up, she confidently adds that she doubts Ichikura would ever get into a fight. At that moment, Ichikura enters the classroom. He casually calls out to Momos, suggesting they head to club activities. Momos sighs in relief, thinking to herself how lucky she is that Ichikura hasn't heard her conversation with Yamamoto. Ichikura turns to Yamamoto and asks her what's up. Yamamoto, clearly startled, quickly dismisses him and says it's nothing. The scene shifts to the helper's clubroom. Momos wastes no time addressing Ichikura. She immediately scolds him, pointing out how close he is to getting caught. She stresses that her earlier comments are meant to protect him. Ichikura brushes off her concern, stating that since she hasn't spilled anything, there's no problem. Momos's gaze shifts to a plushie in the room that serves as a cushion. She picks it up and studies it for a moment, her mind briefly distracted. She then warns Ichikura that despite his reassurances, he's bound to end up fighting again. Ichikura confidently promises that next time he won't. What happens next completely throws Momos off. Ichikura begins unbuttoning his shirt, catching her off guard. Momos freezes in place, her thoughts spiraling. She can't understand what he's trying to do. She can't help but stare at his abs, her face flushing red. Ichikura notices and chuckles, teasing her about being a creep and blushing too hard. He leans closer and brings up her earlier comment about him being skinny. He sarcastically agrees with her, asking if she still thinks he'd be taken out with one punch. Momos's heart sinks as she realizes that he overhears her. Ichikura, seemingly unbothered, tosses his shirt at her and informs her that their task for the day is pulling weeds around the school field. He tells her to go get changed and meet him there quickly. Still flustered, Momos clutches the plushie tightly. She thinks to herself how Ichikura is definitely not skinny at all. The scene shifts to the school field, where the Helpers Club begins their latest task, pulling weeds. Momos crouches down, tugging at stubborn patches of grass and muttering internally about how this club constantly makes her feel like a minion. As she works, her mind wanders back to her middle school days and a feeling of déjà vu creeps in. She glances over at Ichikura, who is diligently working nearby. His focus surprises her, and she thinks to herself how unexpected it is to see Ichikura-kun putting in so much effort during club activities. Then, almost as if drawn by the memory, her mind flashes back to the moment in the clubroom when Ichikura removes his shirt. She quickly shakes her head, trying to push the embarrassing thought away, but it lingers nonetheless. Ichikura, sensing her distraction, glances at her and asks what's going on. Momo snaps out of her thoughts, hastily responding that it's nothing. She quickly adds that she's struggling to pull a particularly stubborn weed. She gives the weed one last determined tug, only to lose her balance and fall backward. Dirt flies into the air, scattering over both her and Ichikura. For a moment they both freeze. Then Momos looks up at Ichikura, mortified. He wipes some of the dirt off his face and then leans closer, glaring down at her. With a smirk, Ichikura calls her a shorty, his tone teasing but firm. Before she can retort, he reaches out and rubs dirt onto her cheeks, chuckling as he declares it's his revenge. Momos, still on the ground and thoroughly confused, stares up at him. She cautiously asks if he's angry. Ichikura raises an eyebrow and responds, asking why he would be angry. He explains that he's used to her clumsiness by now, his tone light-hearted. Hearing this, Momos feels her face heat up. Her cheeks turn bright red, and she's sure it's not just from the dirt. she stammers, denying that she's laughing at anything. Ichikura notices her reaction and asks what's so funny. When she insists there's nothing, he shrugs it off, brushing the dirt off his own hands and returning to pulling weeds. The next scene opens with Momos walking happily through the school corridors. She is practically skipping, her mood light and carefree. Her thoughts buzz with excitement about not having any club duties that day. She wonders aloud what she should do at home, imagining all the possibilities. Her daydreaming is abruptly interrupted when a student comes rushing past her, accidentally bumping into her and dropping a pile of books. The books hit her arm, and she spins around, calling out in annoyance. As she turns, her attention is drawn to a small crowd of students gathered ahead. Something about their posture and hushed murmurs piques her curiosity. She frowns, muttering to herself as she tries to figure out what's going on. When she finally gets a clear view, her heart sinks. In the middle of the group is Ichikura, his collar clutched tightly by a bully. Momos' stomach drops as she realizes Ichikura is in trouble. The bully's voice rings out, filled with anger. He accuses Ichikura of interfering with his plans, claiming that he couldn't get his money because of him. He demands that Ichikura pay up instead. Momo stands frozen, piecing things together in her mind. She realizes that Ichikura must have helped someone escape the bully earlier, and now the bully is seeking revenge. Her thoughts race as she considers the situation. She desperately hopes Ichikura won't retaliate in a place like this. Surely he wouldn't start a fight right in the middle of the school grounds, would he? But her fears are confirmed as Ichikura makes his move. With startling speed, he grabs the bully's wrist in a firm, unyielding grip. His expression darkens, and his strength is impossible to ignore. Momos panics, her instincts taking over. She sprints toward him, grabs his arm, and yanks him away with all her strength. Ichikura, startled, turns to look at her in surprise. The bully shouts after them, furious at their sudden escape. But Momos doesn't stop. She keeps running, dragging Ichikura along until they reach a hiding spot. Breathing heavily, they duck behind a small shed, crouching close together. Momos clings to Ichikura in a tight hug, her heart pounding in her chest. She silently curses the situation, realizing just how close they are in proximity. The bullies' voices echo nearby as they search for the pair. One of them shouts angrily, demanding to know where they have gone. Momos holds her breath, silently praying they won't be found. She dares to peek out, her body pressed against Ichikura's, and sees the bullies giving up. They mutter among themselves and decide to leave. Once the coast is clear, Momos lets out a sigh of relief. She turns to Ichikura and tells him it looks like the bullies have given up. Ichikura, however, doesn't share her relief. He looks at her seriously and reminds her that while he has asked for her cooperation, she shouldn't have intervened in that kind of situation. Momos protests, her voice filled with worry. She points out that if he had gotten hurt, things would have been worse. She then scolds him, reminding him of his promise to quit being a delinquent. She asks him firmly if he doesn't also want to change for the better. Ichikura's eyes soften as he remembers a similar moment from the past when he said something similar to her. He falls silent, the weight of her words sinking in. Momos, realizing she might have overstepped, begins to panic. She worries that he might actually get angry with her. But to her surprise, Ichikura simply says okay. Momos blinks in disbelief, asking him to repeat himself. Ichikura smirks, reaching out to tap her forehead with his finger. He repeats that he said okay and that he will stop fighting. He then makes a promise, his tone resolute. Momos stares at him, taken aback by his seriousness. It's almost intimidating. Ichikura notices her expression and, with an annoyed tone, accuses her of doubting him. He then breaks into a teasing grin and jokingly asks if she wants to seal the promise with a pinky swear. Momos, flustered, quickly agrees. She reaches out and hooks her little finger around his. They lock pinkies, gripping tightly for a moment. Ichikura's teasing smile returns as he comments on how funny she is. Momos blushes, her gaze lingering on him. Her thoughts turn inward, reflecting on the unusual feeling his laughter gives her. Normally, delinquent behavior scares her, but for some reason, Ichikura's laughter doesn't. The scene begins with Momos reflecting on her task for the day as she collects trash. She reminds herself that this is the Helpers Club, a small group with only 2 members. Her thoughts shift to the day's activity, and she considers how their mission is to help someone find clothes to wear to a class event. With a sense of determination, she prepares herself for the next steps. The scene transitions to a shopping mall where Momos waits for her club partner, Ichikura. She stands near the entrance, glancing at her watch, and thinks to herself how late Ichikura is. As she scans the crowd, her gaze falls on a familiar figure approaching from a distance. Her eyes widen, and she thinks excitedly that there he is. She waves at him, but as he comes closer, her surprise grows. Ichikura is wearing a cool, stylish outfit, completely unlike his usual nerdy school attire. When Ichikura finally reaches her, he apologizes for being late, slightly out of breath. Momos can't help but stare at him in disbelief. She processes the situation in her mind and labels him as the day's beneficiary for the Helpers Club. She thinks about how Ichikura, usually a nerd at school, is secretly a former delinquent, a fact that only she knows. This hidden side of him makes her pause as she looks at him in his unexpected outfit. Unable to contain her shock, Momos blurts out that he looks like a delinquent. She questions what he means by calling himself a former delinquent and accuses him of still appearing like one. Ichikura scratches the back of his head and explains calmly that this is pretty much all he has in his closet. Momos is stunned for a moment, thinking to herself how ridiculous this is. Ichikura adds that it's why he needs her help, admitting that it would be strange for him to attend the class event dressed like this. Momos imagines him showing up in his current outfit and internally declares it would be so weird. Annoyed by her blunt honesty, Ichikura shoots back, calling her shorty. As they talk, a couple walking by casts wary glances at Ichikura's striking appearance. Noticing this, Momos quickly grabs Ichikura's arm and apologizes to the couple in an attempt to diffuse any misunderstanding. She then urges Ichikura to leave with her, pulling him away before anything can escalate. As they walk through the mall, Momos remembers how Ichikura once promised her that he would stop fighting. However, she thinks to herself that she doesn't fully trust him yet. The two enter a clothing store, and Ichikura begins browsing. He picks up a punk-style jacket and mutters about how he keeps choosing flashy options. Momos stares at the jacket in disbelief and asks where he even found something so bold. Ichikura points to another jacket, considering it, but Momos interrupts, finally addressing the bigger issue. She asks if he's truly worried about their classmates discovering his delinquent past. Ichikura hesitates before confessing that this is the first time he's ever been invited to a class event. He recalls how a group of classmates had approached him with an invitation, something he never thought would happen. Ichikura shares that back in middle school, his reputation for getting into fights kept him from being included in events. As he speaks, Momos' imagination runs wild. She pictures Ichikura in his younger days, involved in brawls with other students. Internally, she admits that she wouldn't have invited someone like that either. Looking at him now, she reflects on her own middle school experiences. Memories of her classmates teasing her and forgetting to invite her to an event resurface, and she sighs, thinking how relatable his situation is. With renewed determination, she tells him they will find the perfect outfit. At the fitting rooms, Ichikura tries on different outfits while Momos waits outside, ready with her commentary. When he emerges in the first outfit, she remarks that he looks like an active kid. The second outfit, she notes, works but isn't ideal. The third outfit earns a blunt comment about how he now looks like a player. Finally, Ichikura steps out in a look that surprises even Momos. Blushing, she declares that this outfit is perfect and screams him. Ichikura agrees to buy it, but when Momos suggests he wear it home, he flatly refuses. Not one to give up easily, Momos pleads with him, and he eventually gives in, albeit reluctantly. As they browse the store further, Momos' attention is caught by a pair of earrings. Ichikura notices her interest and asks if she's planning to buy them. She replies that they're cute but hesitates, unsure if she should get them. Without saying much, Ichikura picks up the earrings, gently brushes her hair back, and holds them near her ear to see how they look. He steps back, exclaiming that they're really cute. Momos' cheeks turn bright red at his comment. Flustered, she quickly grabs the earrings from him, saying she'll buy them. Ichikura looks confused by her sudden reaction as she rushes off. The day of the event arrives, and the class gathers at a bowling alley. Ichikura's bowling skills quickly draw attention as he strikes pin after pin effortlessly. His classmates cheer him on, impressed by his performance, while Momos watches from the sidelines. Although she feels proud of him, she worries that he's attracting too much attention and might inadvertently reveal his delinquent side. However, she remembers how excited he was to be included for the first time and feels happy for him. Later, a classmate named Yamamoto notices Momos' earrings and compliments them, asking if they were a gift from her boyfriend. Embarrassed, Momos laughs nervously, denying the suggestion and insisting she doesn't even have a crush. Yamamoto teases her further, asking about her type. Momos pauses before listing a long list of qualities: someone smart, good at sports, funny and kind. Yamamoto calls her greedy and they laugh. Meanwhile, Ichikura watches Momos from across the room, and when she catches his gaze, she quickly looks away, flustered. She tells herself there's no way she could ever like someone like him. As the event winds down, the mood shifts when Ichikura steps in to break up a tense situation between a bully and another classmate. His calm and respectful approach surprises Momos, especially when the bully shoves him and slaps him across the face. Ichikura apologizes politely and diffuses the situation without retaliating. Momos watches in awe, realizing he has truly kept his promise not to fight. Later that night, Momos finds Ichikura alone by a bridge. She asks why he hasn't gone home yet. Ichikura admits that he wants to be cool but feels embarrassed about how he handled the earlier situation. Momos reassures him, saying his actions were genuinely cool and moved her. Blushing, she adds that he kept his promise, and if anyone calls him lame, she'll scold them herself. Ichikura smiles at her and quietly tells her she's cute. Confused and flustered, Momos assumes he's talking about the earrings, but when Ichikura clarifies that he means her cheeks flush even more. As they part ways, Momos thinks to herself, wondering what if she accidentally starts liking him. Momos stands in her classroom, carefully cleaning the windows. The rhythmic swipes of her cloth against the glass fill the quiet room, but her mind isn't on the task at hand. Her thoughts drift to Ichikura. She pauses, furrowing her brows as she whispers to herself, wondering what he means by his earlier words. The question lingers in her mind, and she tries to reason with herself. Maybe that's just how delinquents act, she thinks. Her memories take her back to middle school, to an incident she can never forget. A group of delinquents teased her, mocking her bangs, saying they were so cute, even joking that they might start liking her. The teasing leaves a mark on her, and the memory still makes her uncomfortable. Her reverie is broken by a voice calling out, cutting through the stillness of the classroom. Someone is calling for Ichikura. Momos looks up and sees a student standing nearby, holding a book. The student shows the book to Ichikura and asks which one he likes. Momos watches the exchange closely, her curiosity piqued. She wonders if they're talking about their type in girls. Ichikura, without hesitation, points to something in the book, saying he likes that one. Then he points to a popular anime item, adding that it's cute. Momos stares at him, her thoughts swirling. This what Ichikura meant when he called me cute. She frowns slightly, feeling a mix of confusion and frustration. His standard of cuteness seems so odd to her, and she feels silly for even thinking about it. The scene shifts to the faculty office, where Momo stands in front of her teacher. The teacher hands her a math quiz and warns her not to take it lightly just because it's a quiz. Momos replies earnestly, saying she's trying her best. The teacher, unconvinced, remarks that they're more concerned about the results of her efforts. Feeling embarrassed, Momos glances at Ichikura, who is nearby, and quickly asks what he's doing. The teacher explains that Ichikura often comes to ask questions about class material. Momos blinks in surprise, taken aback by how diligent he seems. Her impression of him is slowly shifting. The teacher continues, suggesting that since they're in the same club, Momos should ask Ichikura for help with her studies. This suggestion leaves her stunned. The idea of studying with Ichikura feels strange yet exciting, and she can't help but feel a flutter of anticipation. Later, as they stand outside the office, Momos summons her courage and approaches Ichikura. She asks him if he can help her study for the next quiz. Ichikura hesitates, admitting he's never taught anyone before. Momos feels her hopes falter, and she quickly reassures him that it's fine. Internally, however, she's panicking, fearing he might outright reject her. Just as she begins to lose hope, Ichikura speaks up, telling her not to complain if she doesn't learn from him. Momos looks at him in shock, hardly believing his words. She asks him in a small voice if he really means it, and Ichikura confirms his offer. Relief and disbelief wash over her as she realizes he's going to help her. The scene transitions to an empty classroom. Ichikura sits beside Momos, explaining math problems step by step. He shows her how to factor numbers and group equations together. Momos listens intently, finding his explanations surprisingly easy to understand. As she works, she notices how close he is sitting to her, but she tries to brush it off and focus. Ichikura hands her a page of problems and tells her to try solving them on her own. She nods, determined to get them right. While she is engrossed in the problems, Ichikura casually removes his glasses and announces that he's taking a nap. Momos looks up, startled, as he leans forward and rests his head on the desk. Her gaze lingers on him, her mind wandering, until he suddenly opens his eyes and catches her staring. He asks her what she's doing, and Momos quickly blurts out that she just remembered his glasses are fake. Ichikura explains nonchalantly that glasses make a person look smarter. Momos chuckles at the absurdity of his reasoning, calling it stupid. Then, without thinking, her eyes dart to his face and she blushes. Feeling flustered, she apologizes awkwardly, but Ichikura seems unbothered. He goes on to explain that the glasses also serve as a disguise to prevent old acquaintances from recognizing him. Then, returning to the lesson, he urges Momos to hurry up and finish the problem. As she works, she can't help but think about his past. She concludes that he must have been a strong and infamous delinquent, and that thought makes her even more curious about him. When Ichikura checks her answers, he finds that most are correct, though a few are wrong. Momos' heart sinks, and she worries that he will give up on her. But to her surprise, Ichikura calmly suggests they review and try again. His patience amazes her, and she recalls how he calls her clumsy before. She realizes that he knows her well yet still chooses to help her. This motivates her to work even harder. Hours later, exhaustion begins to creep in. Momos feels drained, noting how long it has been since she studies this hard. Ichikura notices her state and reaches out, gently adjusting her posture. His sudden action startles her. He then comments that she looks like her pencil case. Momos blinks, confused, before remembering her pencil case. A Tibetan sand fox design. She frowns, calling his remark unfunny. Ichikura laughs, calling her cute. Momos' cheeks turn red as she stammers, reminding him that he has called her cute before. She adds that when he says it so suddenly, even as a joke, it startles her. Ichikura appears confused, asking if that isn't normal. Momos quickly clarifies that it isn't, explaining that people rarely call her cute. Ichikura teases her further, asking if she likes him now. Flustered, Momos' face turns crimson, and she abruptly stands up. She shouts that she doesn't like him and begins gathering her things. Before leaving, she thanks him for teaching her and storms out of the room. Ichikura watches her go, stunned by her reaction. Outside, Momos reflects on her outburst and feels embarrassed for revealing so much about her middle school experience. She grows frustrated, thinking that Ichikura is just teasing her like those delinquents from her past. The next day, after the quiz, Yamamoto asks Momos how it goes. Momos replies that she thinks she does better than usual. Just then, Ichikura calls out to her, asking about the quiz. Still annoyed, Momos ignores him and tells Yamamoto that she has forgotten something and needs to go back. She insists Yamamoto go on without her. Returning to the classroom, Momos encounters Ichikura again. He greets her, but she pouts and walks past him, thinking to herself that she isn't the same as before. She won't let herself be treated that way anymore. In class, the teacher hands back the quizzes. When it is Momos' turn, they praise her for working hard. Nervously, she looks at her score -41 out of 50. Excited, she approaches Ichikura, showing him her score and thanking him for helping her. She also apologizes for her behavior. Ichikura sighs and asks if she really thinks he is like the delinquents from her middle school. Momos freezes, surprised by his words. He then adds, almost casually, that if she still thinks that, she should go out with him. Ichikura asks Momos if she wants to try going out with him. Momos, completely taken aback and confused, responds by asking what he means. Ichikura clarifies that he intends to prove he is different from those scumbags. Momos silently repeats the word prove in her mind before asking what will happen if he can't prove it. Ichikura assures her that she can abandon him if that is the case. In her thoughts, Momos admits to herself that she doesn't have the courage to do something like that. Ichikura then tells her that from now on, she should take care of him because she is his girlfriend. Hearing this leaves Momos completely shocked and confused as she wonders if she has just become his girlfriend. The next day in the morning, Momos walks to school, reflecting on how she couldn't sleep the night before because she keeps thinking about what happened. She thinks about how Ichikura is her first boyfriend, but also a former Yankee. She reminds herself that she has never dated anyone before and isn't sure how to act. Yawning, Momos enters the classroom and accidentally bumps into someone. Panicking, she apologizes and asks if they are okay. Realizing it is Ichikura, she thinks about how she can somehow feel their connection. Ichikura greets her, calling her by name, and then lightly pats her shoulder, cautioning her to look ahead while walking because it could be dangerous otherwise. Momos agrees, saying he is right, but internally she panics, thinking about how scary it is. She wonders if this is how he treats his girlfriend. As she sits in class, Momos reflects that despite dating Ichikura, nothing about him seems to have changed. She thinks about how Ichikura is such a my way type of person. Looking around, her eyes land on Yamamoto, who is sitting with another student. She wonders if she and Ichikura should eat lunch together but feels unsure. Just then, some students call out to Ichikura, asking him to join them at the cafeteria. Ichikura agrees, saying he will come. Momo stretches, takes out her phone, and searches for ideas about what couples usually do. Reading suggestions like holding hands, going on dates, talking, and making out, she imagines herself flirting with Ichikura, but quickly dismisses it, thinking it will never happen. At that moment, Yamamoto approaches and invites her to have lunch together. The scene shifts to the sports field during a lecture. Momos, feeling drowsy after lunch, listens as the teacher instructs everyone to pair up and practice catching balls. She notices Ichikura watching her and finds it unsettling. When Ichikura quickly looks away, she can't help but wonder what that is all about. Yamamoto calls out to her for practice. As Momo steps back to catch the ball, her foot lands on it, causing her to slip and fall. Yamamoto rushes to her side and asks if she is okay. Dazed, Momos thinks about how she can see stars. A fellow student approaches, apologizes, and asks for the ball. Meanwhile, some students laugh and whisper, commenting on how normal it is for something like that to happen. Ichikura picks up the ball and casually says it is his bad before throwing it directly at the face of the student who is laughing. With a smirk, he claims he is bad at baseball. The students react in surprise, some noting how impressive his throw is. Momos, observing, thinks that Ichikura must have done it on purpose and notes that his eyes don't smile. Turning to Momos, Ichikura suggests skipping class. Momos, confused, watches as he informs the teacher that she has gotten hurt and that he will take her to the infirmary. The teacher agrees without hesitation. Momos, still unsure about what is happening, follows Ichikura. At the infirmary, Momos mentions that the teacher in charge is on a business trip until the next day. Ichikura replies that he already knows no one will be there. Momos tries to explain that she isn't injured, but Ichikura places a hand on her forehead and notes that she doesn't have a fever. He points out that she has been wobbling all day. Momos thinks to herself that maybe he is actually worried about her. Feeling flustered, she wobbles away, thinking she has completely misunderstood his intentions. Ichikura sits on the infirmary bed and remarks that she can now sleep as long as she wants. Momos, feeling tempted, eventually lies down on the bed, giving in to her exhaustion. She asks if it is fine for an honors student to skip class, and Ichikura reassures her that the lesson is almost over anyway. As she lies there, Momos wonders why Ichikura wants to date her. She thinks about his earlier statement about proving he is different from other Yankees. The thought embarrasses her, and she quickly sits up, her mind in turmoil. She notices Ichikura looking at her and nervously asks if there is something on her face, pointing out that he has been staring at her. Ichikura dismisses the idea, explaining that he has unconsciously noticed how she has tied her hair the same way as usual. Laughing at himself, he admits he got carried away. Momos, confused, asks what he means by that, but Ichikura simply apologizes. When Ichikura asks if she is planning to sleep, Momos, embarrassed, hides under the sheets. She thinks about how she might not be the only one aware of their connection. Gripping the pillow tightly, she blushes, wondering what this all means. Ichikura lightly pats her through the blanket and tells her to sleep quickly, adding a teasing tone. Momos feels like he is making fun of her, but eventually drifts off. Ichikura watches her fall asleep and, smiling to himself, thinks she looks like a baby for falling asleep so quickly. When Momos wakes up, she panics, realizing she needs to return to class. However, she notices Ichikura is asleep, hugging her. Shocked, she pushes him off the bed and hides behind the curtain, accusing him of being too fast. She wonders if Yankees are naturally quick. Ichikura, annoyed, tells her he will kill her and adds that her habit of rolling around while sleeping is so bad he often has to catch her. Embarrassed, Momos apologizes. Ichikura, adjusting his glasses, asks how she is feeling. Momos replies that she is okay now and has slept well. Ichikura acknowledges that is good. As she walks back, Momos thinks about Ichikura's earlier words about proving he is different. She realizes that even though he has a rough exterior, he is the first good Yankee she has ever met. She reflects on his kindness and admits to herself that she has already known it since the day they started dating. Momos and Ichikura sit in the helper's club room, where they often wait for requests. Today, however, the hours drag by uneventfully, leaving Momos with a growing sense of boredom. She glances around the room, thinking about how dull everything seems. Just as she is about to sigh, the door creaks open and a student walks in. The girl holds up a pamphlet and asks, somewhat skeptically, if the support club really means it when they say they will help with anything. Her tone and expression seem to challenge the claim. Momos, curious, takes a closer look at the visitor. It doesn't take her long to recognize her, Kazuno Mishuru, a senior from the second year. Kazuno gets straight to the point. She confidently states that she needs help breaking up with her boyfriend and wants Ichikura to pretend to be her new boyfriend for a week. Momos observes her boldness and thinks about how this girl simply grabbed the club's notice and came here without hesitation. Ichikura seems taken aback by the sudden and unusual request. He asks Kazuno why she can't just be direct with her boyfriend and tell him she wants to end things. His tone is calm but curious. Kazuno sighs and pulls out her phone, explaining the situation in detail. She reveals that her boyfriend has been secretly spending time with one of her friends. Unable to control her emotions, she confronted him without listening to his explanation, leading to a heated argument. In her irritation, she impulsively claimed she liked someone else, which only made her boyfriend more persistent in trying to reconcile. Momos glances at Ichikura and notices his expression. She thinks he must find this situation troublesome, though he doesn't say as much. Kazuno repeats her request, her tone firm and determined. She asks again if she can rely on the Helpers Club for support. After a moment of silence, Ichikura agrees to help. His response is calm, but there is an unmistakable sense of duty behind his words. The scene shifts to a park where Kazuno and Ichikura stand in front of her ex-boyfriend. Without hesitation, Kazuno declares that Ichikura is the person she likes now. Her voice is clear and her confidence unwavering. Momos, watching from a distance, wonders if the ex-boyfriend will even believe such a sudden statement. The entire scene feels abrupt and almost theatrical. She can't help but notice how close Kazuno and Ichikura stand to one another, and for reasons she doesn't fully understand, it bothers her. Kazuno's ex-boyfriend, however, remains unconvinced. He steps forward, pushes Ichikura on the shoulder, and causes his glasses to fall. As Ichikura bends down to retrieve them, Kazuno stares at him intently. A sudden recognition lights up her face, and she exclaims that she knows who Ichikura is. Kazuno reveals that they attended the same junior high, though Ichikura was younger. She remembers him as someone famous for his looks and reputation. Momos, standing quietly, finds this revelation surprising. Kazuno begins teasing Ichikura, commenting on how different he looks now compared to their school days. She even asks if she can take a picture of him as he is. Ichikura flatly refuses, his tone firm but not rude. Kazuno, however, remains undeterred. She admits that she likes Ichikura's face and suggests they should date for real instead of pretending. Her tone is light, but there is an unmistakable seriousness beneath her words. To this unexpected proposal, Ichikura quickly grabs Momos' hand and declares that he already has a girlfriend. His voice is steady, and there is no hesitation in his words. Momos, caught off guard, blushes deeply. Kazuno, unfazed, shrugs and hints that it doesn't matter if he has a girlfriend or not. She suggests he might still end up visiting her home someday. With that cryptic comment, she turns and walks away, leaving Momos flustered and thinking seriously. The following day, Kazuno returns to the Helpers Club. She boldly asks Ichikura for his line ID, making it clear she isn't giving up. Ichikura, trying to avoid the situation, claims he doesn't have his phone with him. Momos, watching this exchange, thinks to herself that Kazuno is surprisingly persistent. Kazuno, however, doesn't buy Ichikura's excuse. She accuses him of lying and questions why he insists on maintaining such a lame appearance. Ichikura finally stands up and addresses her directly. He explains that he has chosen to leave his delinquent days behind and focus on his studies. His tone is firm as he tells Kazuno to stop talking endlessly. Later, when Momos and Kazuno are alone, Kazuno turns to Momos and asks for her line ID instead. She explains that she wants to stay in touch. Momos, flustered, hesitates but eventually agrees, handing over her phone. Kazuno asks Momos to tell her everything she knows about Ichikura, as he refuses to share any details himself. Momos, caught off guard, admits that she doesn't know much about him either. Deciding to turn the question around, she asks Kazuno what Ichikura had been like during junior high. Kazuno describes Ichikura as someone who always walked alone but was known for being good at fighting. She mentions that he had been intimidating yet strangely popular. Momos finds this surprising and struggles to imagine Ichikura as a delinquent. Kazuno adds that Ichikura used to have blonde hair, which made him look even cooler. Momos can't hide her shock and thinks about how different that image is from the Ichikura she knows now. Their conversation is interrupted when Kazuno teases Momos, asking if she had been the one to confess to Ichikura first. Flustered, Momos insists it was probably the other way around. Kazuno smirks and says she doubts it, leaving Momos feeling embarrassed and frustrated. The next day, Kazuno returns to the Helpers Club yet again. She bombards Ichikura with questions about his preferences, favorite foods, and hobbies. Clearly annoyed, Ichikura tells her she's being too noisy. Momos, organizing documents, can't help but notice how frequently Kazuno visits. It feels as though she has practically become a member of the club. Suddenly, Kazuno asks Ichikura what he likes most about Momos. Momos freezes, her face turning red. She wonders if it might be her face but isn't sure. Ichikura, irritated, calls both Kazuno and Momos noisy. Feeling unfairly scolded, Momos complains quietly to herself. She notices how close Kazuno is leaning toward Ichikura and feels a twinge of annoyance. Kazuno, however, isn't done. She teases Ichikura, threatening to spread photos of his delinquent past if he doesn't answer her questions. Furious, Momos steps forward and firmly tells Kazuno that she absolutely cannot do such a thing. Surprised by Momos' outburst, Kazuno quickly claims she was only joking. She leaves the room, calling Momos stupid on her way out. Confused, Momos turns to Ichikura and asks if Kazuno is angry with her. She wonders aloud if she should apologize. Ichikura chuckles at her overreaction, which only makes Momos more annoyed. As the week passes, Kazuno continues visiting the Helpers Club. Momos thinks it has been long enough and wonders why Ichikura is still pretending. She can't help but question whether Kazuno is serious about her feelings, and if so, what Ichikura will do. One day, Kazuno enters the club and announces that she has something to say. Ichikura steps forward, but Momos panics and asks him to wait. She pleads with him not to go. Kazuno, however, reveals that she has made up with her boyfriend. She explains that the misunderstandings have been resolved and apologizes to Momos for all the trouble she caused. After Kazuno leaves, Ichikura turns to Momos. He asks if she really thought he would choose Kazuno over her. His voice is steady, his gaze intense. He leans closer, placing his hand on the wall beside her. He tells her firmly that he isn't going anywhere because he's hers. As Ichikura leans in, their lips almost touch when Momos' phone buzzes with a notification. It's a message from Kazuno, apologizing and sending a photo of Ichikura from his junior high days. Momos stares at the photo and exclaims that he looks terrifying. Ichikura, annoyed, tells her to be quiet.
Here I am, know it's been a while. I was in denial about my love. Here I stand, I know I walked away.